Commissioner, you may now begin.
Good morning. Good morning, all. This is the Housing Opportunities Commission of Montgomery County's October meeting of the Development and Finance Committee. With me on my left is Commissioner Jeffrey Merkowitz and Vice Chair Rick Nelson, and I am Jackie Simon. To my right is our Executive Director, Sanders. The first item of business before us this morning is the approval of the Development and Finance Committee minutes of September 28th.
Second.
The minutes have been approved as circulated and the motion has been made and seconded. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The minutes of our September meeting have been approved. The next agenda in front of us is the approval of the finance plan. Am I correct?
That is correct.
And I'll turn that over to Sanders to lead us into this discussion.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners, members of the public and the HOC team. This matter comes before you with a request that you support our recommendation to move forward with approval of our final amended finance plan for our residents on the lane. Presenting today will be Jennifer Washington, our Acting Director of Mortgage Finance, supported by both Victoria Dixon, our Senior Multifamily Underwriter, and Lynn Billiquitz, our Financial Analyst.
Hi, good morning, all. Good morning, Commissioners. This is Jennifer Washington, Acting Director of Mortgage Finance, and Victoria Dixon, our Senior Multifamily Underwriter, will walk us through our requests today.
Thank you, Jennifer. As mentioned, my name is Victoria Dixon, Senior Multifamily Underwriter for the record.
Can't hear you.
We are requesting the approval of the amended financing plan for the residences on the lane, formerly known as Upton 2. On January 9th, 2019, one more slide, thank you. On January 9th, 2019, the Commission approved the finance plan for the transaction with subsequent amendments on February 6th and February 22nd. The amended $51.5 million finance plan included, among other things, a bond issuance of up to $24 million in tax-exempt private activity bond in the likely form of variable rate bonds, an allocation of the Commission's annual volume cap for the $24 million due to the private activity nature of the transaction, and a tax-exempt construction loan funded by M&T Bank in the amount of $24 million to be taken out by the FHA risk share permanent loan of up to $27.5 million. We are happy to report that the property is now nearing completion of the construction and stabilization phases, and staff is preparing for the permanent loan closing, which is projected to occur in February of 2023. The property is an important element in HOC's portfolio, with 90% or 135 of the units restricted for senior households with incomes between 40% and 80% of area median income, AMI, as relocation housing for 112 households previously residing in the nearby Rockville Town Center apartments. Based on review of the property's current operations, the property will support a permanent loan of $27 million. Given that volume cap is a limited resource and to date only $24 million has been allocated in volume cap for the transaction, the Maryland Community Development Administration, otherwise referred to as CDA, has agreed to permit recycling of its multifamily private activity volume cap of up to $5 million from repayment of their bonds maturing on December 1st, 2022 to complete the transaction. The Commission previously recycled CDA's volume cap in 2020 with the Laureate transaction. On the next slide, page 10. Finally, with an increase to the permanent loan and the need to fund bond reserves under the 1996 indenture, staff recommends increasing the bond issuance amount from 24 million to 29 million. Included for your convenience is a summary of the finance plan for cumulative changes as previously approved by the Commission and those proposed today. Of note, the Commission previously approved entering into 2 swaps used to hedge variable interest rates during the construction and permanent financing phase. On the next slide, today staff recommends the Development and Finance Committee join in recommending the Commission to approve the following for this transaction. The amended financing plan totaling approximately 51.6 million, a bond authorizing resolution for the issuance and delivery of tax-exempt indebtedness in a combined amount not to exceed 29 million to fund A, the permanent loan for the transaction of up to 27 million, and B, the bond reserves under 1996 indenture. And lastly, for the HOC to loan up to $5 million to the borrower by way of short-term taxable bonds on the line of credit with PNC, which will be used to provide interim financing to complete recycling CDA and be repaid upon closing of the permanent loan. The next slide, page 12, provides a brief overview of key aspects of the transaction. And on the next slide is a brief overview of the property's public purpose, with 135 units restricted for households earning between 40% and 80% AMI. In addition, 82 households have tenant-based vouchers, which permit collection of rents above LIHTC rent limits. A comparison of the actual rents and the LIHTC limits are provided in the table shown. On the next page, 14, to mitigate interest rate risk of issuing variable rate bonds for the permanent loan, an interest rate swap in the face amount of 27 million and a fixed rate of 2.39% was obtained in 2019 as approved by the Commission. Underwriting of the property supports a permanent loan of 27 million at a debt service coverage ratio of 1.43. Income at the property today is higher than previously expected, as there are currently 82 units with tenant-based vouchers, permitting collection of rents above the LIHTC limits. And as a senior building, turnover of these residents is expected to be low. However, we performed a sensitivity analysis showing that of all 82 units with the tenant-based vouchers were to leave, rents would return to the LIHTC limits and the property would still cover its debt service at a 1.19 times. If half the voucher households were lost, the property is estimated to cover at a 1.31 times.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
2 questions, really. What are we required to have in the way of debt service coverage?
We are required to have a minimum of 1.15.
Secondly, I was not aware that we could in fact charge a higher rate for voucher holders than the LIHTC. I thought I'd been told before those amounts were set above that. So I'm a little confused on this issue.
Well, these are executed leases from the rent roll that were populated into the package, but I'm not sure if we have someone more specific on the property management.
Sure, I can address that. So as long as the tenant portion does not exceed the tax credit rent, we can request a slightly higher rent as long as it's reasonable rent with the voucher program.
So the difference is paid by through the voucher.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Correct.
Okay.
Does that help us
Oh, yeah.
get the AMI lower on some of these, on some more units?
So the resident would still have to meet the AMI qualification. It just helps us get a little more rental income for the properties because we can get a slightly higher rent. Again, it just, as long as the tenant portion doesn't exceed the tax credit rent, then we can ask for.
It would also help us on the mix because voucher holders have a lower AMI. So therefore, when we're looking at population, we'll
That's,
have more people at the lower AMI than we had originally anticipated.
that was what I was getting at.
You pretty good,
Yes,
Great.
this has the, or you want the unit mix comparison table?
yeah.
Okay, yeah, so that was on page 13. The
Yeah.
resolution's not great to see it here.
Yeah, there's some, there are 40% units that are matched with the project-based contract that came over. So we do have some 40% units. And as Commissioner Nelson said, between the project-based units and then the high prevalence of tenant-based vouchers, because these are the folks, they got these vouchers at Town Center Apartments as part of it being closed down, so they put the vouchers over the Upton as what the plan were, the residents of the land plan. So you have about 80 to 100 families, households in there being served at very low AMIs because they have vouchers that were at Town Center Apartments. So the reality is they are, we're serving even when we did it, it's here. And then in terms of the excess income, the excess income is really mostly because of these tenant-based vouchers, which are not project-based, so we can't rely on them. Really, albeit we certainly get the excess cash flow. So it's not a permanently higher income that we can rely on.
Right.
Just looking for every penny we can get to get down lower.
Just, sorry, then, just so that I understand, is the rent that is affordable at 40% AMI the LIHTC limit, or is the effective rent?
It's,
Those are the lines that were-
Right, okay, that's what I thought. So if someone in that unit is using a voucher and that individual left, we would need to, if it's not replaced by a person with a voucher, we would need to reduce the rent.
Yes, so anybody that lives in that unit, vouchers or no, can't make more than 40%. So now on the 40s, those are the project-based units. But to your point, to answer your question, practically, the reality is any of the other units where there's a voucher, a portable voucher in there, a portable voucher, then those LIHTC limits are become the requirements for the next tenant, whether they have a voucher or not.
Thank you.
For just clarification purposes, I just asked the team when you're speaking to identify yourself and your title. We had Ellen Goff, our acting property management director, as well as Zachary Marks, our chief real estate officer, responding to those questions.
And if I could make the request of removing the mask while you're speaking, they just muffle the sound so badly. I appreciate it. Thank you. Are there other questions?
Were you finished with the?
I have more to continue
Okay,
through, but
please.
unless you have more operational
I'll wait.
questions.
Thank you.
So if we could move then to page 15. There you go. So with the proposed higher permanent loan of 27 million supported by the property, the updated sources and uses for the transaction are provided. Of note, subsequent to the original approval and closing of the construction loan, the transaction received a difficult development area designation, which resulted in a higher LIHTC equity contribution than originally expected. On the next page, 16, is an overview of the volume cap recycling process. As outlined, first will be the draw on the PNC line of credit, which will be used to repay the maturing CDA bonds on or prior to December 1st. Then when CDA receives the bond repayments due from their borrower on that date, those funds will be sent to US Bank as HOC's trustee and deposited into a special account. These recycled funds will be held by the trustee until issuance of the new bonds in February 2023. and a portion of the proceeds of the new bonds will be used to repay the PNC line of credit, while the recycled funds will be released for funding of the new permanent loan. On page 17, provided as a brief timeline of actions to achieve the bond issuance and closing of the permanent loan under the FHA Risk Share program. And provided on the next page 18 is an outline of the bond authorizing resolution for the increased issuance amount of $29 million and funding of the bond reserves. Page 19, therefore, in order to execute the finance plan as presented, staff recommends approval of the amended financing plan for the residences on the lane, totaling approximately $51.6 million, a bond authorizing resolution for the issuance and delivery of tax-exempt indebtedness in a combined amount not to exceed $29 million to fund the permanent loan and reserves, and for draw of the $5 million on the PNC line of credit to complete recycling with CDA. The proposed changes have no adverse effect on the Commission's fiscal year 2023 operating budget. And when drawn, the $5 million on the PNC line of credit, while temporarily reducing the Commission's general obligation borrowing capacity, will be repaid upon closing of the permanent loan in February. In conclusion, as these changes will enable permanent conversion of the property on page 20 in support of HOC's mission to provide safe and affordable housing, staff recommends the committee to join in recommending the Commission to approve the actions as recommended.
I just had a curiosity question. The 4.1% permanent loan interest rate.
Yes.
It seems great, both given that the estimate was originally 5.5% and in our current rate environment. Were we able to get it that low because of the hedge, or?
Yeah, the underlying swap is at 2.39% as the base rate. Then on top of that are the additional fees that we pay, like for the trustee, the loan management fee and such, that get up to the 4.1 average. It also includes a cushion in there as well, just in case. Yeah, and the goal
won't
could
see
be
many of those anymore.
Aren't you happy you locked in the swap?
Yeah. Case where it really pays off.
For a
Yeah.
while, anyway.
I
Any
don't have any
discussion?
other questions.
I would move, the approval to send this forward to the full commission.
It's been moved and seconded. If there's no further questions, all in favor say aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. The project we're very proud about, and one of the things that was mentioned earlier is that we are at 93% occupancy and moving forward.
Already. Wonderful.
Getting full occupancy. The
What's the
next,
occupancy of, the Old Town Center? How many are left?
None?
I believe we're
Nobody.
down to one or
Pardon?
zero. There's one.
Zero.
Zero.
Awesome. All right. And we'll move to our next item, which is the missing middle at Sandy Spring, which is also a very exciting challenge and opportunity. An opportunity to cut new ground, which we enjoy seeing. So, Sandy, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This presentation will be delivered by our real estate team and involves moving forward with the Sandy Spring Missing Middle project. You may recall we provided reference materials in regards to prior approvals along the way related to this development. This is the development that we're really excited about. It allows us an opportunity to demonstrate really how you can create rental properties in some of the more suburban communities, across our county. And it's a project in which we do at this point have support from Park and Planning, and we anticipate that support will be ongoing. And so I'd like to turn it over to our real estate team, and I'm not certain who's starting on this presentation. Thank you.
All right, for the record, Marcus Irvin, Director of Development. I'm joined here with Zach Marks, Chief of Real Estate. So from a high level perspective, we're here for 3 requests as part of this ask. One being approval to submit the site concept plan to Park and Planning. The second request is part of the ongoing pre-development efforts for an additional tranche of pre-development funding to carry the project forward. And then the third being to contract with Zabos Architecture and Design from our architectural pool to advance the concept plans that you see here into more refined drawings. As Zach will get into the history of the development, once again, this is born out of a pilot project, part of an infill development where we're essentially looking to incorporate about 19 homes that, for all intents and purposes, appear as a townhouse, but will incorporate many of the principles and practices we've seen at Park Redland, which is a way to include universal design / design for life elements into this development. And the concept plans that you see here, once again, are really a massing and what could go on the site, taking that project forward. The architect will place hard lines and provide more refined drawings to get us through 23 on the pre-development effort. So I'll turn over here to Zach to just kind of walk us through the history, some prior commission action, just where we are today on it.
Thank you, Marcus. So starting on page 24. So the history here, this project is being proposed to be built on excess land that on which currently HOC has its Sandy Spring Meadow development, which is former public housing, comprehensively renovated under RAD, converted to project-based Section 8. And this is some excess land that is just undeveloped. Back in 2015, sort of knowing this, and because the Sandy Spring the Sandy Spring Village plan was going on, master plan was going on at the time, we purchased an adjacent home at 617 only Sandy Spring, which helped to sort of square out this excess land that we already owned and create a development pad. As it became clear that missing middle housing was a thing and that Montgomery County was trying to figure out how it fit into the context of this county, we decided to explore what that might look like, and certainly delivering missing middle housing in a place like Sandy Spring in a way that is compatible with the town and helps to build upon the architecture that already exists, in that old town. We think was a big challenge, and we think we've done a nice job of balancing those compatibility issues with achieving some real subtle density, if you will. So there are 19 new units that are going to be created as a result of this, and that's 19 units on 1 physical acre, which is a very, very dense for this sort of a part of the county. And so the fact that we've been able to deliver it in a way that doesn't look like it's dense at all, it's very gentle or subtle density, again, was the point of what we were doing. And the other thing I think it's really important to take away from this is that if you are in search of rental housing in Sandy Spring, you're not going to find flats. You're not going to find apartments. It just doesn't exist. A lot of the parts of this county are really single family home only. So if you want to be a renter, you're renting a single family home. And if you're a single person or you're a couple, renting a full single family home doesn't make much sense. And so this project will actually deliver 1 and 2 bedroom units, which are extremely rare to find other than as like an accessory dwelling unit or something like that in Sandy Spring. And of course, with single family homes, as Marcus mentioned, around universal design and accessibility, single family homes, townhomes are generally not going to come with those kinds of accessibility features. So we're able to deliver units here that really make accessibility a centerpiece. The last piece in terms of the development is that we are adding 900 square feet of community space, which will not only be available to these 19 households, but to Sandy Spring Meadow as well, which does not currently have any community space as part of its community. So we'll have 74 homes that now have access to 900 square feet of meeting space, a really nice zero entry wraparound porch, really pleasant. And it will also have the benefit of adding sidewalks along Route 108, Olney Sandy Spring Road, and really start moving toward better pedestrian access, safer pedestrian access once you leave our Sandy Spring Meadow community and get onto 108 to walk to the high school, to walk to the Sandy Spring Museum, to walk to the elementary school, things like that. So, just quickly flipping to 25, you can see some of the previous commission approvals where we've steadily marched through the feasibility and pre-development process. And so, as Marcus mentioned, we're now at a point where we've had some community meetings. We've had lots of meetings with parks and planning. We've had, design review committee, and we're prepared to submit our site plan, which is really the last stage in the entitlement process. On page 26, you can see that even though this is a small property, it fits within a much larger context, that the Sandy Spring Village Plan actually has Brook Road and only Sandy Spring Road as kind of the main and main of the town. And it's where the future Village Square will be. Well, this, even though that's where there is some commercial today, it doesn't feel that way right now, but this development here, this missing middle development we're doing, will actually wind up being adjacent to the future town square. And so having some of this additional density is really a great spot for it, because it's going to be at the future Village Square.
Zach, excuse me.
Yeah.
But what has been the community response to this?
In general, it's been, yeah, right. I mean, and certainly going into Sandy Spring with development, certainly with some of the things that had gone on with other developments in Ashton, which is to the east, we were certainly, we took great efforts to try to make sure that we were viewed independently. And so we've had, good community meetings where there was sort of feedback, and, there were concerns expressed, but in general, the community reception has been okay. We didn't have any opposition at the first submission, which was preliminary plan and sketch plan, and we don't anticipate any strong opposition here at site plan.
I think this project, in concert with the Thrive vote that's pending, has really triggered some rather county-wide response to the concept. And I've really been disappointed to see that reaction. Not surprised, but disappointed. And so I'm glad that the community itself has been responsive.
Yeah, I mean, and we really just took, because rather than, that there's so much hypothetical in that discussion. And so we really just focused on this property and said, we're going to try and give everybody something actual and real and physical to look at and walk around in and say, that's what it can look like. And our hope is that adding that to the conversation may help folks to at least see one way that can be done successfully, and in a way that, the existing community feels like it's an asset. But most importantly, it delivers on real housing goals. Pages sort of 28 through 33 give you just a sense of the site plan, what we're going in with in terms of the design. I think the two most important things from these slides are really, one, that while this is site plan, and we've spent a lot of time making sure in selecting sort of the architectural theme, that it's consistent with what planning feels is the Sandy Spring ethos, if you will, or aesthetic, I guess is better. So we've taken a lot of time to get to a general exterior skin and a look and a feel to these buildings that feels like this is what you would see, anywhere in Sandy Spring. And when you look at these homes, the idea is to give the impression that they are, single family homes or townhomes or even large manor homes, but that are obviously serving more than one family. Slide 33 is particularly important because we felt one of the big opportunities here was to be able to deliver accessibility, universal design, both exterior and amenity accessibility, and also unit accessibility into this community, which again is more difficult in single family areas because of the multi-level nature of those properties. So I think
small question.
Yes.
Is there going to be community mailboxes?
Yes. Yeah, there'll be a mailbox stand.
A single.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah. Page 34 gives you, or slide 34 gives you a sense of what, what's in the multi-use space with a unit off the back. So on the left side, you see multi-use space. On the right side, you see it. There's a unit. And again, we just think it's a great achievement to add this amenity as part of the project costs to be able to serve both this community and Sandy Spring Meadow as well. Sandy Spring in general does not have too many options in terms of community meeting space. So this was something that was important to the team. We're also looking to select an architect. So we issued RFP 2330 and we got 4 responses. All 4 were responsive, were deemed responsive. There were the key criteria were, company qualifications, the proposed project team qualification and availability, the project approach in terms of how it's going to move through the process of design to get to construction documents, and compensation. On slide 36, you can see the responding firms. These are all firms that HOC has worked with on many occasions, and so it was a really good, robust architectural response. On slide 37, you can see the difference in terms of pricing. So we are recommending the firm that that proposed the lowest cost.
Can you give us a little bit more information in terms of the big disparity in architectural costs?
Yeah, I mean, they obviously came in significantly cheaper than the other 3 that were sort of clustered around the high 4s, low 5s, low to mid 5s. We have, again, because we've worked with all these architects before and with some clarifying questions, we asked clarifying questions of each to make sure they had everything in their scope. We do feel comfortable that it is a good bid rather than someone not scoping adequately. So yeah, we're comfortable that despite disparity in price, that it's
the uniqueness and the of this development as being a first in this concept and so forth. Was that considered in the scoring, or was there special consideration given for accessibility and universal design, or are you going to be having a consultant that will be working with the team, or how did you look at this, given it was a first and it was going to be monumental?
Yeah, we certainly explained, when we sought firms and put the scope out, we certainly made clear that this is missing middle, which does have, so you need to have kind of a little bit of both worlds. You need to have the ability to design something that looks like a single family home from a pure architecture perspective, which is not, that's not a niche talent, but sometimes single family architects are single family architects only, and multifamily architects are multifamily architects only. So it's not surprising that we got some of the smaller sized firms in our pool here, because those are the ones that tend to play in sort of the small multifamily and then the single family space. So the fact that all 4 respondents were really the 4 of the smaller firms in our pool was not surprising on that particular front. We didn't give any specialized points. We just looked at how the backgrounds were compatible with what we were asking for. Again, we're not really asking for anything. There's nothing particularly unique about missing middle from an architecture perspective, other than being able to blend some of the multifamily elements with family elements. And then from the universal design perspective, for now, we think, we've done a lot of front-end work, as you can see, prior to even putting the architecture out. We already spent a lot of time with our design team, really getting to an accessibility plan. So we're confident for now that these architects can simply deliver, what we've put in place.
Can I in our prior experience with this low bidder, have they traditionally underbid other folks? I mean, this is, to me, it's troubling, because I just don't understand why the architectural is so far below the other three. Same is true in terms of engineering, and the engineering is also, I mean, normally one would question this, and somehow you guys are not. So I'd like to know what our experience has been in terms of their pricing.
Yeah, I'd have to check. I mean, right now,
I mean, they're working on Stewarttown, and those are townhouses that have required some modifications. So they've been responsive in making sure that any kind of ADA modifications can occur in those units. And so if you look at the pricing, it's indicative of just where we are in timing wise for design firms. So with the plans that they already have, it doesn't provide a whole lot of difficulty in sort of taking what's already in concept and then working with your mechanical and electrical subs to essentially take those hard line drawings and add in the equipment for it. So they've got the structural engineering in there, the MEP piece, and down the line we would have, when we get to the construction stage, an accessibility consultant to confirm what is being built does meet all the requirements of the drawing. So, but all four firms have worked on HOC properties and are actively working on them. So, and like I said, Zabos most recently in Stewarttown.
But there are lots of reasons firms bid low too, not just necessarily for to get the job, but also to build a resume in a field. And missing middle, I think, is going to become a specialty. And I wonder if that might be the element here.
yeah, and we can certainly add some language to the packet as it advances, just to, if there's anything else, because this is the project manager here is out today, so he may have some additional thoughts that I'm just missing, so he can add those. But in general, our view is that we do have all this active experience with all of these architects. Stewarttown is winding up is winding up right now very successfully. And we can also see if they were also sort of below others on that when we made the Stewarttown selection.
Do they have cost overruns on Stewarttown?
No, Stewarttown's on time, on budget. So yeah. Slide 38, really just letting you know that right now we're projecting, we'd be projecting starting construction in about a year. Hopefully get site plan approval March of 23, and then be able to start sometime around October of next year. Obviously, we'll be back, a few more times with the various approvals necessary to get to that point.
Completion would be.
How long 18 months?
Probably about 18 months to maybe 24 on that.
So mid 2024 or the end of 2024?
Yeah, and 24, early 25.
25, excuse me.
Yeah. So slide 40 just outlines the request, as Marcus mentioned. So submission of the plan to planning, the fourth tranche of pre-development funding assuming we close in October of 23, all the pre-development funding to date, which is the 1.55 number or 1.56 number would be repaid out of costs of the construction of the project, and approval to negotiate and execute a contract with Zabos Architecture, there is no impact on the budget, and again this chunk of OHRF plus all other pre-development funds would be reimbursed closing in about a year.
quick comment and a quick question. Rick, certainly when I saw the numbers, certainly raised an eyebrow from me as well, but seeing also that we've been working with the firm reassured me some, and knowing that we must have experience with them, I'm happy to take the savings. I did see that, so we're saying that at least 25% of the units from this project will be MPDUs. We have not settled on the final income mix yet.
Yeah, I mean, so so what we're going to do as we submit, so in terms of our submission to planning, it's a 25% requirement, but that's just for the purposes of the approvals that we need to get the 19 units that we want. So that doesn't, our kind of working estimation is that it would be at least 30, but that would be something you all would determine as we bring you the plan for finance for the project. It certainly wouldn't be less than 25, but our working approach to this has been sort of the typical start at 30 and see where it goes. You may have, we've mentioned to you in the past that we're looking at a few different ways to try to bring some layers of affordability to this project. So you'll see that in the next cycle or two where we come to you in a way to talk about, to start really digging into that issue of how does the thing really price? Who are we serving? Who are we going to serve? And what are the layers of affordability beyond just the generic 30 that we start with, 30% we start with. And the only note I would make is just that Sandy Spring Meadow, the existing Sandy Spring Meadow, is 48 project-based Section 8 units and 7 unrestricted units. So that's also something we were thinking about in terms of the combined community and the income, both the income served and Sandy Spring Meadow is more really three bedroom, larger family style units. So also thinking about how these two projects, are a little bit of a phase 1 and phase 2 of a joint community.
Well, and I think you've made good provision for parking here, which provides some balance. Earlier models that we saw of the missing middle had the ground space taken up by garages and all the living space up above, which meant nothing could be accessible. And I think the use of topography here is to be commended as well. I think the primary example of using topography is Meadow Bridge Villas that is up in Prathertown, where there are units accessible from the uphill side and units from the downhill side, and they were self-contained condominiums with full access. Just by maneuvering the land around, they were able to get all of the units to be fully accessible with garages and so forth and so on. So I'm delighted to see these techniques being used here, and I commend the staff for the effort put into that. I just think the more usable our units can be, the more economical they're going to be for lifetimes.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it really, credit is really due to Marcus and Jay, as well as Townscape, our captive in more ways than one, in our land planner. They spent a lot of time. One of the big concerns voiced generally and that we did here in our community meetings were around concerns about how much off-street parking was being provided, because a lot of times there are issues around missing middle, having multifamily. Does that mean there are 8 cars instead of 2? And so part of what you've seen in the evolution of this plan is making sure that there's enough parking off-site, like on-site, off-street, that that gave everybody comfort that you're not going to have cars, scattered around the community. So that was big. One detail I did forget to mention, just for the record, is that the reason, notwithstanding that we usually do rental, sometimes folks have asked, why wouldn't we go for sale here? And notwithstanding again that we usually do rental, part of it is because this is going to wind up being a ground lease because of the nature of the existing RAD development. So the land on which we would be building here is actually collateral for Sandy Spring Meadow under its financing, having converted under RAD. And so this project will actually technically ground lease because it can't take fee simple ownership of something that's already collateral, another deal. So just in case that was something that was a question, we just want to
We
mention.
don't get into the challenge of the cost of condominium fees.
Right.
When you go sale.
Right.
And, that's the biggest challenge I think the MPD program is facing.
Definitely.
I don't want to see us get to a disproportionate number of 1 and 2s though, given the tremendous time period in our recent history where we weren't building, where the county was not building anything but 1s and 2s. Because I think we still, particularly in our renter program, are needing the 3s and 4s as well.
Yeah,
I'd love to see sometime a presentation on our waiting list household size as our planning correlation and how they fit, and whether periodically we need to re-examine that mix to decide how.
Commissioner, we are in the process of gathering data to help inform the strategic planning process. So a part of that will be having that data to allow us to think more strategically about our next 5 years.
That's great.
Yeah, and it's a little topsy-turvy here because this is one of those areas we don't usually develop in areas like this, and so it's one of these areas where we're doing 1s and 2s, as you know from our
All development too,
yeah.
So that certainly makes sense.
Yeah, and then on the and obviously in our typical developments, more of our our larger infill TOD type of developments, obviously we do typically show you a lot of 3-bedrooms, family units, and stuff like that. So like at the Lindley and other places where we've taken extra steps, and you all have encouraged us to do so, to make sure we have ample 3 bedrooms, family format rental, even in our multi-family buildings.
I do trust that on our final architectural drawings, we'll see some distinctive characteristics on those lower level exterior walls. There's just an awful lot of blank space, and I hope that we'll see that broken up some visually, but I think you've done an extraordinary job achieving a number of goals.
Thank you.
That will meet several needs. Are there other questions or discussion? Is there a motion?
I wish that we join the staff's recommendation to offer preliminary site plan application planning, approve the 4th tranche, the OHRF, and authorize the director to negotiate and execute a contract with Zavos Architecture.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's moved and seconded. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Thank you.
We're delighted. Thank you very much.
And
Thank you, Commissioner.
let me just say, I would hope to do a little more digging, just
Mhm.
check on the pricing.
Yep.
And make sure that it's comfortable.
Yep, we'll add some meat to that. Thank you.
And that is our planned agenda. I would just like to put on the agenda of a future meeting the impact of the pending legislation on radon remediation in all rental units, and its budget impact particularly, because as I understand it, it's going to be required for rental licenses, which means all of our vouchers, every unit is going to need to be tested and remediated. And so
yep.
I think that would be useful to us to know the impact of that and whether it's going to impact our request for county help in offsetting the cost as we do licensing. It may be a parallel mandate that should be calculated in our requests from the county.
And what's the status of that?
The council, the Fed committee was voting on it today, and the amount of the meeting that I overheard indicates that it's on its way to the council. I don't know the timing. Staff meeting.
Hopefully, as we staff up, we will improve the communication with the commission, let us know that things like this are on the table.
That is the goal. We have our new director of legislative.
I know.
The anticipation is we will hear much more. And in terms of thinking about the financial implications, we will begin the process of evaluating that. I want to manage expectations. I don't know if we'll have that in the month time frame, but we will definitely begin the process and be able to give an update on how things are
Well, but I also think that, and again, this is looking forward. When legislation like this is proposed, we need to have that exploration into the financial impact before, so that we can in fact raise the issue with the Fed committee if it's going to impose a significant burden on us. It's an unfunded mandate that the council should consider funding for us and for maybe other affordable housing. So it's not waiting until after it's the horse is out of the farm. We need to start jumping on this stuff early on in the process.
This will affect all of our voucher units as well, and I just wonder if it's going to impact on the willingness of landlords, or whether it's going to shrink the pool of landlords. People are having a terrible time finding units.
And is there a time limit in terms of when it can be implemented, or do you know?
I didn't hear any discussion of that
But it
issue.
still has to go to the full council.
It has to go to the
So
full
it is
council,
something,
and that's
I mean,
relevant.
one of the things maybe we ought to look at it to see whether or not there's a significant impact on us in terms of the task of doing it, if within the time frame, whatever that might be, cost, what the impact is on the voucher landlord that we have. I mean, all of those. If we can look at some of that, if there's some serious impact, we might have to raise it at the full council level.
Let me just ask an opportunity to look into it closer. I'd also be curious to know what we're already required to do as it pertains to our federal requirements. So don't want to misspeak. I'd like an opportunity to see if we're already meeting those obligations.
Well, potentially needs, would end up being part of our inspection process and all the rest of it, and that.
Well, thank you so much, commissioners.
Thank you so much. Is there a motion to adjourn? It's been moved and seconded. We stand adjourned. Thank you so much.
Thank you.